Welcome back to the Orbit Football Podcast, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tyler Stevens, joined by your co-host Cade Williamson. We've seen a pretty big weekend of Week 10 college football, and we're just gonna go ahead and jump right into it. It was a big weekend, big marquee games, and a lot of games that decided some conference battles. But speaking of conference battles, the SEC West, Alabama defeats LSU. They put themselves basically 2 games ahead of everyone in the West. I know this was a back and forth game for you. You were pretty high on LSU. I've been pretty high on Alabama, even with the rough start of the season. So, how did you see this game go? Did you see anything that intrigued you a lot?
This game kind of went the way I thought it was going to go personally. Yeah, I've been high on LSU, but I know what Alabama is. And I think they're the most talented football team in the country. There's a difference between talent and best, but I think Alabama, when you match them up against anybody else in the country this year, I think that they have the most talent. And obviously that goes to, obvious them being Alabama. Nick Saban doing what he's been able to do for the past 15 years with that program, 15 plus years almost now with that program, but just building up a powerhouse and recruiting. And that's what I saw, is that Alabama is the most talented team in college football this year. I've waited a while to really definitively say that, but I can definitively say that after this game. And, this game went the way I thought it was going to play out. I had this one 45-35, and we were very, very close to that happening. I had it as a 10-point game. It ended up being a 14-point game because I thought LSU was going to go up by a field goal at halftime. Instead, it was tied at halftime. So there go those 3-4 points. They went in Bama's favor, so that's how the game ended up playing out. But Alabama is the best second half team in the country this year, period. And I think a lot of that has to do with just the coaching talent even. Obviously a lot of changes were made of Alabama in this offseason because they had to go get a new DC, had to get a new OC, things weren't going the right way. And Saban went out and probably got, I don't know about Tommy Rees, but Steele on the defense, one of the best hires probably of a coordinator this past offseason. But, and Tommy Rees has just done what he needs to do so far this year. That team still is just a team that's built on shot plays and trying to run the football, but it works. And it works because of the talent. Like I said, talent on that roster makes it work because no other team, I think, I'll say this. I think Alabama's the top talented team in the country. I think Ohio State's too. I know we differ on that, but I think those are the two most talented teams in the country this year. Just by the way that they're built, when you take an experience and recruiting factors and everything, just raw talent on a football field. And I keep seeing it week in and week out from Alabama. This team, I very much debated moving this team up from 7 to 2 this week, or even 1 this week, because I know what this team is going to do. I think this team at this point, even though little spoilers, I might have them a little lower than Georgia, my top 25. I think this team is built to go win the SEC this year. I like the way they match up if they end up facing Georgia, who we'll get to a little later in the episode. But Alabama just, I don't know, that they did what they needed to do. Obviously, the big thing in this game was that Jalen Milroe scrambling. That's really what won them the game. I believe he had 4 rushing touchdowns on the game. And that was the reason why, was because LSU never made the adjustment to QB spy him. He had room for days to run. Pocket would collapse, and he would just scramble out of the pocket and go run for like 40-plus yards. And that's the reason why Alabama really won the game, was because Milroe was able to use his legs. Obviously, we know what LSU's defense is this year. They've got problems, and Alabama just did what everybody else has been able to do. And, LSU's only chance was to really go bar for bar against Alabama, and they were for a while on offense, but that one tip pass, that one turnover, that's it. You got to be mistake-free. And Jaden Daniels had a heck of a ball game, I will say. Now I think a lot of the national media is starting to fall on the hype that I've been around since about week 3, and that's that Jaden Daniels is probably the Heisman frontrunner, and now people are starting to feel that way. I've been on this. I've been saying this for a while. He just did it be on the national stage against Alabama, and it turned some heads. He played a very good ball game, I think, personally. He had a couple throws here or there, but, I mean, that's going to happen when you're facing a defense like Alabama that's probably top 3 in the country, maybe top 2. That's what's going to happen when you face a team like that. You're going to have some tougher decisions to make. I don't care who you are. And you're going to have a couple passes that aren't going to go your way. Obviously, though, the one ball, it's just tipped up in the air, and Alabama gets it back. And, I mean, that's really the game because LSU's playing behind the 8 ball. Then Daniels goes down with the injury. I know we kind of almost thought it was – there hasn't really been any word about it. I thought it was a broken jaw as soon as it happened. I was really surprised there was not a flag there on Dallas Turner. But, Alabama just – they did what they needed to do in this ball game, and they keep on winning. They keep on winning week in and week out. All three of us, me, you, and Blake, really thought that this was a matchup nightmare in favor of Alabama, and down the stretch of the game, it kind of looked like that. LSU, valiant effort on their behalf, but the defensive issues really is what pushes Alabama ahead in this game, because all LSU needs to do is just QB spy Jalen Milroe, and it could have been their ball game to win. But no adjustments are made, and that's really it. I mean, that's the big takeaway I get from this is that just this game was just Alabama being Alabama and them putting the most raw, talented roster together and putting it on a football field and getting a victory over LSU.
Yeah, my biggest thing about this game was that I just don't think it was a very well-coached game from LSU defensively. They were very shorthanded coming into this game, and I think that was the big talking point. It was how was this team gonna fare up? But I don't really think they ever made adjustments to ever kind of slow down Milroe running the ball. And the only really time they did slow him down is when Alabama just went straight to the option game, and it worked still, but LSU was able to get 2 2nd and 5s, but even after that, even in a drop back passing game, they didn't really do anything differently. I expected them to, especially coming out of the second half, to at least put a spy on them. Then when you have Harold Perkins, on your defense, one of the best spies in the country, I figured that's what they would want to do. But no, they really just dropped them. They kind of just dropped him, to the first down yard marker, but they didn't really pursue him until Milroe was really running in full stride. And once you get Milroe running in full stride, he's so fast and agile. I mean, he can make any man miss, and he was making even Harold Perkins miss. Like, I don't think it was a very well coached game from the LSU side. Obviously, offensively, they had their success, but I believe LSU, they, in the first quarter, they had 21 points, but they kind of struggled with, timeout management and actually being able to get snaps off because they were down to 1 timeout heading into the second quarter, and I think they were down to 1 timeout with like 5 minutes left in the first quarter. Just a lot of issues. It didn't feel like, I don't want to say LSU didn't feel like they were ready to play because they played a really good first half, but I think we got a sense that Alabama was just the better coached team and the better well-mannered team in the game. That's at least how I felt. I think Alabama, they did a really good job in the second half. Coach Steele, he's there to Alabama to do those kind of things. This defense is playing unreal. They just went, they gave up 28 points to LSU. LSU is one of the best offensive teams in the country, if not the best offensive team. So I don't think any LSU or any Alabama fan is going to be upset with how they coached the second half because I mean they shut down this offense even with Nussmeier ended up coming in with the Dallas Turner hit to Jaden Daniels ended up injuring him, and maybe he is in concussion protocol, so who knows if it's in concussion and broken jaw. I thought it was a concussion personally, after the first glance, but I do see what you seen with the broken jaw. Just didn't really move his mouth much, but yeah, I think this was just Alabama through and through. I think it was probably one of their best games of the year, if not the best game they've had. But I think a lot of that is because LSU just they weren't changing any of the looks that they were giving Alabama. I think Alabama was just overall better, and the final score shows that. And Jalen Milroe is having a great game, and honestly, if Milroe can play like this down the stretch, and they end up winning against Georgia, might not be a popular thing, but that could be your Heisman front runner depending on how Ohio State, Michigan, all the kind of top teams pan out. I mean, Jalen Milroe could be at the end of the year being the Heisman front runner, which is something crazy. Especially after that Texas game, I don't think a lot of people were seeing that, but it could happen. Who knows, folks? But we'll have to watch down the end of the year, and now they have essentially a 2-game lead over the SEC with Ole Miss having one loss in conference to Alabama. And speaking of Ole Miss, the team that they're going to be playing this upcoming week, Georgia, was in a pretty big game against Missouri, and they end up pulling that one off 30-21. I don't think the line was 15.5 coming into the game, but I don't think a lot of people were picking Mizzou to win, but I think Mizzou, they turned a lot of heads even in a loss. I think they played very well. What did you see from this Georgia Mizzou game?
I thought this game was really interesting. I thought this game was going to be close. And Georgia did what I really thought that they were going to do in this game. Really, the biggest difference in this game was the 2 turnovers from Mizzou, because I don't know if I thought that they were the better team, but they were pretty darn close in this game. I mean, they could move the ball on Georgia. They did a lot of good things offensively. They could run the ball. They could throw the ball. They had a very balanced attack, and that's the way to beat Georgia. I think that Georgia, specifically to me, if you can move the ball in multiple facets, it opens up the run game very well. And I mean, they ran the ball with pretty decent consistency, Missouri did, which is something to keep an eye on down the stretch of the season. But obviously Georgia just did what they needed to do. They grinded out a win. They've done this multiple times this year now. Even before this Missouri game, they've done this multiple times this year. They did it against Auburn. They did it against South Carolina. They've done it all year. Very similar to how Alabama's done it, where they're in a close game around halftime and they just grind out a victory because in the second half they make 1 or 2 big plays. Same thing happened. They made those 2 big interceptions. Obviously, the one gets brought back for as much as it is, and then there's the flag after. But still, it's a very momentum-swinging situation there for Georgia, because it's a game that's a 1-score game, and then you have the ball and you have a chance to really put it away, and that's what happened in this ball game, is that Georgia just kind of, like I said, they grinded out this victory, and Missouri had I was really impressed by Missouri's defense in this ball game, because there were a lot of issues after the LSU game early in the season that I had from them, and then obviously they beat Kentucky in that ball game, and Kentucky is a very one-sided attack, very similar to a team that Missouri is going to take on this week in Tennessee with running the football, and Missouri did a pretty decent job of stopping the run against Georgia. Obviously Georgia's going to get what they're going to get because it's Georgia. They are, when you talk about talented rosters, they're in my top 3. They're third in what I think is the most talented roster in college football currently, but Georgia just, they do what Georgia does. There's not much more else I can say about this game except this is just a Georgia win. And, they got another tough one this weekend against Ole Miss at home, and they got to travel to Neyland. So, it's still in play. And Georgia can lock up the SEC East this week. All they need is either a Tennessee loss or to win from them, and they lock up the SEC East, because they only have 2 more conference games with Georgia Tech at the end of the season, being an out-of-conference game. So they only have Ole Miss and they only have Tennessee left in conference. All you got to do is hope that Mizzou wins this weekend, or you beat Ole Miss and you have locked up the East. Now, obviously, they're playing for a little bit more than just locking up the East, but still, that gives you a little bit of a buffer zone, because you're probably taking on Alabama, and whoever wins that game is getting in the college football playoff. I think we both can agree on that, and might even be the number 1 rated team in the country in the college football playoff when it's all said and done. But not much really more else I can say, except this is just a Georgia win, and they're doing what they need to be doing.
Yeah, I ended up picking Mizzou in the game, and I think it was not risky, but it's betting against Georgia. But I have, after watching how this game unfolded, I have no. I don't feel bad about picking Mizzou. I thought they played a really good game. I think what happened is they were playing a close game. They were going down to take the lead, and then the turnovers came from Brady Cook. I thought Brady Cook played a solid game. I don't think he played bad. I don't think he played great. The trend continues with him, where he's going to kind of continue to struggle against zone coverage. That's kind of his thing, and I'm expecting a lot of teams to start playing zone coverage against him, and I would not be shocked. Not because they're a bad team, just because I think Brady Cook, he's got him here, but I think he's probably, the weak link about this Missouri team, as I just don't think he's that great against zone coverage, and I think, it's a 1 point line against Tennessee, and I think Tennessee might end up, we're going to see a pretty aggressive defensive outing from Tennessee. But I thought Missouri, I thought they played good. I thought they matched up very well against Georgia. I think Luther Burden ended up getting hurt in this game. I think that was kind of a something that definitely held them back. 7 targets, only 3 receptions, and had that big bomb. I believe it was 39 yards to open up the scoring for him. Go up 7-3 early, but you were talking about the Missouri defense. I didn't think they played as well as you said, but I did think that they played well when they needed to. They bent when they kind of needed to, and it gave the offense a chance to go back into it. But I think it also made the offense put a little bit of pressure on themselves. They had to go down and score touchdowns. They couldn't, they can't settle for field goals in this game. So, but yeah, I thought, hats off to Mizzou. I thought they played a good game. Georgia, he just showed why they're a really good team still. Even without Brock Bowers, they're starting to find this offense, and Ladd McConkey is a big part of it. He has been fantastic the last 2 weeks of the season, against Missouri and Florida. I thought they've played, he's been great. He's been banged up this year, and if Brock Bowers does come back this year, which he should, either for the SEC championship or whatever bowl game / playoff they get into, I think if McConkey's playing at this level, I don't know if a team is going to be able to stop this Georgia offense. I think Carson Beck is continuing to be the guy for the Bulldogs, and I think that if Bowers does get back, people are going to want to stop the pass. It's just going to open up the run for Edwards there. Just a really good game from both teams, I think. And Georgia was the clean team, and Georgia was the home team, and Georgia ends up coming out with the win to move to 9-0. The next game we have on our docket, Texas defeats Kansas State in overtime, 33-30. A really interesting game because I think I don't really know how you gauge this game, but I think I have a definitive take, and if I know you I think I do. I think you're gonna have a bit of a different take with this one. So, what did you see in this game? I think it's an interesting game, and I want to hear your thoughts on it.
I think that, personally, my thought of this is that Texas is a very good football team. And I mean a very good football team that can win a national championship this year, very good football team. That's my take out of this game, personally. I think that, they should have easily just gone and won this game by a big amount because their defensive line was getting pressure on Will Howard all day long. I mean, and that's the big thing for Kansas State. They played Will Howard basically the entire game. I mean, Avery Johnson rarely saw the field. He saw it a little bit at times, but when they scored, it was Will Howard's job. And Will Howard didn't really have a good game. The reason why this game was close was because of turnovers. Texas was up, I believe they were up by 3 scores heading into the fourth quarter or late in the third quarter, and then they turned the ball over twice, and Kansas State's right back in the ball game. And, I think that Kansas State, obviously forcing those turnovers was a big part for them, but the big thing that I have to say about this game is that I think that Kansas State, really with Chris Klieman and Colin Klein here in this situation, is that they had a chance to win this game. And, Texas is sitting there, a game that you probably should have lost by about 21-24. Texas is sitting there and handing you, a chance to win on a silver platter, and you aren't taking it. And, there were a couple bad play calls, in my opinion. I know we might differ on this because, you're thinking it's because of Texas's talent. Texas's talent on the defensive line was there, but, Kansas State had a handful of opportunities there down the stretch of the game where they could have done something very different, and it could have won. Obviously, the 4th and goal play from the 4, they were trying to throw that ball in the flat at the 2-yard line. A, why are you throwing it short of the end zone in the flat to try to beat Texas at Texas? And B, why are you just not throwing that ball to the end zone? Obviously, pressure got to Will Howard because, the flat was taken away by Texas, and great scheming by Texas there. But, you got to have a better play call dialed up than trying to throw the ball in the flat against Texas on from the 4. If it's from like the 2, maybe I could say, okay, that's fine. But it's from the 4. You're a little bit further back. You're starting out a shotgun also. So you're already at a disadvantage because the quarterback's getting the ball at the 7-yard line, and you're having your either slot receiver or tight end go out and try to receive the ball at the 3-yard line, run 3 yards, beat a Texas defender, and then dive for the pylon. I disagree with that call there. I didn't think it was the best call, and that's what I get from Kansas State in this game is that I thought they were completely outmatched in this ball game. This ball game kind of went the way I didn't think it was going to go. I thought Kansas State had a decent recipe to compete with Texas, and they really didn't. It's just, and it even showed in the key moments that they didn't. It's just Texas made those mistakes. And obviously it's because, Malik Murphy's at quarterback. He didn't look the best against BYU, and he didn't look the best against Kansas State. He had a couple really bad mistakes, but he got the job done when he needed to. And it's rumored that, Quinn's going to be back next week. It could be, after that. But, I mean, when you have talent like that on the outside for Texas, dude, A.D. Mitchell, man, this dude is special. I mean, he was just burning Kansas State secondary all day long. And when you have a talented guy like that who's, a fringe first-round NFL talent to early second-round talent, I mean, you're going to have success. And I think my biggest takeaway from this is that, yeah, Texas can win a national championship this year. I think Texas is a very good ball club. It's just they can't get in their way. And they've had a couple games this year where they've really got in their way. Happened against Oklahoma. It kind of happened against Kansas State this weekend. And that's the one thing that concerns me about Texas is that they kind of stumble on their own feet a couple times. And, how long is that going to be sustainable for? Because you're sitting there, now you control your own destiny. All you got to do is win out, and you're likely in the college football playoff. Period. Simple as that. You beat Alabama on the road, probably one of the best wins in the country. Actually, probably the best win in the country right now, I would say, is Texas's win at Alabama, in my opinion. Either that or no, that is the best win in the country, period. I'm making that statement. I'm sticking by that. So you have the best win in the country, and you would be winning a Power 5, with one loss. Your losses to Oklahoma on a neutral site. You had a couple moments that slipped away from you in that game. And you watch Dylan Gabriel play the best game of his college career. Things happen. And that's what I get away from this Texas team is that they're a very good football team. And they have the talent to win a national championship this year. They just can't stumble over their own feet anymore.
Yeah, I think Texas dominated this game, honestly. The fourth quarter was rough. I think the nerves kind of got close to Texas. They got, I believe, they handed Kansas State 3 touchdowns, 20 points. The PAT that got away from them, which, evidently, I'm not going to say it lost Kansas State the game, but, if it went exactly how it went, Kansas State would have won this game by 1 on a walk-off field goal. But 20 points on 72 yards of offense, and that was because of just boneheaded turnovers that Texas had. That's really what decided this game, to be so close, because I thought Texas dominated this game. Their defense was all over the place. Kansas State really just did not have I didn't really have an answer when even when it was close. I think there was a reason why Texas went up 17-0 at the end of the first quarter. I think that they were just they had anything they really wanted offensively, and you're talking about Mitchell, but I want to talk about Xavier Worthy. I think that you talk about him. I think they have 2 first-round talents at receiver, which a lot of teams can't really say this year. I think the receiving talent for Texas is just unreal, and they have a pretty damn good tight end too there. So this passing offense, it's gonna have to get better, even no matter who quarterback is, because I think if this passing offense really explodes and hits stride coming down to this part of the season, I don't know if anyone's going to be able to beat this Texas team, because they're physical up front. I'm not going to say they have the best front, but they definitely have a pretty well front on both sides of the ball. Their defense has been very well this year. I think they're really only stepping. The bad game they've really had was against Oklahoma, and even with that, Texas was they had the lead with under a minute left in that game. I think Texas is, I think this win might open some eyes for them. I think they might be able to with the stretch, might open their eyes and get them on the right path to get to the Big 12 championship game with one loss, and that being against Texas, which it looks like right now you're not even going to be playing Oklahoma again, which a lot of people I think were talking about after that Red River game, but it looks like they're not going to have to play Oklahoma again. At least for right now with their stumblings a little bit, but yeah, I'm on with you. I think Texas. This is a good game to have for them. I think it's a game that they win and escape in November, but also it's I think it's a game where you can get their focus back. You can get them to come down, especially after the big lead they had. I think it's a good thing at this point of the year. I think you want those kind of games to have because they dominated, but they were also still in a spot to lose. Kansas State can just get a few yards there on fourth down. It's a different story, but yeah, I think this is a win or this is a game for Kansas State where you want to look. You want to look at them. They had the target on their back heading into this year. Just they won the Big 12 championship, which I think a lot of people don't remember about. And they ended up playing Alabama in a bowl game and New Year's Six game. Yes, it didn't go well, but for Kansas State, this has been, Chris Klieman has this program in a pretty good spot. And even though I said what I said about Texas, about them kind of dominating this win, it's just another good look for Kansas State because, yeah, looking back on it, you're going to see 33-30 in overtime. You're not going to see, the fact that Texas kind of took this game over, but I think it's a good game for both sides because Kansas State, it gets them to fall back. I think a lot of people were on them for they've been beating some of the middle teams, the lower end teams in the Big 12, but that's what they should be doing. So I think this was a good game to have. I think Texas, they got on to survive, but I said their name earlier. We're going to go ahead and talk about them right now. The last bedlam that there's going to be in quite a bit, if not ever. Oklahoma State takes them down 27-24. Really enjoyed this game. I thought this was a really good game. And, I think another name that's going to be popping up, especially, if they can win out and go to the Big 12 championship and win it, I talked about Jalen Milroe potentially, winning Heisman out of nowhere. Ollie Gordon is another guy that has been fantastic this season. He gets Oklahoma State to a win. What did you see in this game? I thought it was definitely a fun Bedlam game to have.
It was definitely a fun Bedlam game, I will say. Very competitive game. To me, it just kind of seemed like Oklahoma State had a bit of an edge in this game. Oklahoma made it very interesting, though. But it just obviously you're in Stillwater. It's a very tough place to play. And the last Bedlam that was there in Stillwater, Oklahoma State won in a very tight ball game, and they did it again. Oklahoma State, I didn't have them in my top 25 yet. I picked them to win. And they just barely cracked my top 25 this week. They've figured something. Alan Bowman, I mean, he didn't even have the best. He played pretty solid, though, I will say. I'm not gonna discredit him. I think he played what he needed to in this game for Oklahoma State to succeed. But obviously, the big story, like you said, it's Ollie Gordon. Ollie Gordon had a very, very good game. I mean, this guy's, I believe he might still be leading the country in rushing yards. I know he was up there this year, but I mean, he's one of the best. Statistically, he is leading the country in rush yards. He is, over 1,200 yards right now on the ground this year, which is insane. When you have a guy like that can do that week in and week out, you're gonna find some success. And Oklahoma State did just that. Obviously, there's the pass interference call that's against Drake Stoops. I believe that's created a lot of controversy because it was a no call and Oklahoma was not able to score in that situation, which led to Oklahoma State winning. But, this game was very close, and it could have bounced either way. It just bounces Oklahoma State's way. And for them, I mean, like we said, they're sitting in the driver's seat right now. All they got to do is win out. Then they've got, I believe they've got UCF, who, is 4-5, sneaky 4-5, I will say. That game is going to be very interesting in a letdown spot this weekend for Oklahoma State. But then they got at Houston, and then they got home against BYU. Houston's toward the bottom of the barrel in the Big 12 this year. Tough place to play. I'm not going to say it's not. And then BYU, who just got thrashed by West Virginia this weekend. BYU obviously has the offense, but I think we saw an injury to Slovis in that game, so that'll be
Slovis did
interesting
not
to
start
see
that
moving
game.
forward.
He's been hurt all week.
That's right. It was their backup quarterback who got hurt in that game. They had to go to their third-string quarterback in that game is what it was for BYU. But, I mean, those are 3 very winnable games for Oklahoma State, and you're sitting there facing Texas for a chance to, be the upset kings this year, to beat both Oklahoma and Texas, and to, get back at what you could have had 2 years ago, and that's a Big 12 championship. They were inches away 2 years ago from making the college football playoff, likely probably getting absolutely thrashed, but still making the college football playoff, and they can go win the Big 12 this year. And to do that, that's a really good position for them to be in. And power to them. I think that this team still has some of its struggles, but they found themselves in a really good situation this week. Oklahoma was coming off of a loss at Kansas. Oklahoma State was at home. They've been hitting their stride. Just perfect timing for the Cowboys in this game.
Yeah, I think we found the only thing that Ollie Gordon can't do, and that's throw the ball. He threw a pretty bad interception, but I mean, talking about Oklahoma State throwing the ball, I mean, Alan Bowman, he had a fantastic game as it was, 28 for 42, 334 yards. Didn't have a touchdown, but didn't turn the ball over either. I think, especially in the early part of the year, we were talking about the Oklahoma State passing game because they were starting 3 quarterbacks up until like week 3. They take that brutal loss to South Alabama where they just get throttled. And unfortunately, even though, if they do win out here and they do beat Texas, they're probably not going to be looking at a college football playoff spot just because of that game. But Oklahoma State, they've made so many strides throughout the year, and they're really forming into one of the best Big 12 teams, and they deserve it if they do get in because they've been playing really good football. They've just beaten everyone in their path, and that includes Oklahoma, who, we're talking about Oklahoma State, finding their way, and I think Oklahoma is finding the slide that they're going to kind of fall into for the rest of the year. What happened last year definitely didn't happen as brutal last year. I think, I think we're finding, the talent of Oklahoma. It's kind of, it's good. It's just, it's not going to be good enough right now. I think Venables is still on the climb, though. I think Oklahoma is looking to be a really good program in the future, and especially heading into the SEC the next football year. But just a really fun game. It's unfortunate that this is going to be the last one for quite a while, but just a really fun game. I think both teams played well, and it slid on the side of Oklahoma State. So with that being said, we're going to go into the last game that we're going to talk about, and potentially one of the most fun games to talk about for me because something happened the day after. But Washington, 52-42, in a dogfight shootout in Southern Cal. This game was interesting. I really did not get to watch a lot of this game, but I did watch the fourth quarter of this game, so you're gonna have a little bit more knowledge about myself about this game. So I'm gonna go and let you spill about this one.
This game was just absolutely crazy. I really flipped between. I had both the Washington game and the LSU game on, LSU Alabama game on at the same time, but I was flipping between both of them. And I mean, we hit the over in like the middle of the third quarter, so that just tells you how crazy that this game was. It's just 2 offenses that are absolute juggernauts going at each other. Washington with its talent. I mean, James Polk had a really good game in this game. Roma Tunze, did his thing once again. And the more and more I keep watching these wide receivers, man, the more I just get impressed by Washington's talent on the outside. Like, they are just wow. And even Penix played a fantastic game. Obviously, that's not really much saying against the USC defense, but it might be, here in about a week or so. But it's a good win for Washington. They go to hostile territory. They keep their playoff hopes alive. I think, though, that the more and more this season goes, I think this team has its issues. I think that this team's issues become more and more apparent, in my opinion. But USC still got a high-powered offense. It's just their defense, man. It's absolutely inept, and that's the best way to say it. But it should be getting at least a little better because of a recent coordinator firing. But yeah, I don't really have too many takeaways from this game. This is how this game I thought this game was going to go. I just thought that I thought it was going to be pretty close. Washington was going to pull away, and that's what happens. Washington's just. They're a very good team. They're a very good offense, but there's still some question marks I got around that team right now.
Yeah. The fourth quarter I watched was very entertaining. I will say that. I think it was a very entertaining game in general, but I did only watch the fourth quarter, so I'm gonna go. I'm gonna talk more after the fact. Alex Grinch finally relieved of his duties. I think a lot of people seen this one coming, especially after the 52-point bomb that Washington just put up on this defense. I don't support coaches getting fired because it's a very hard profession to be in, but this kind of just needed to happen. This defense has just been the biggest laughing stock in college football for not just this year, but the last two seasons, especially at USC. I'm expecting USC to kind of jump up a little bit this week. I think that defense might be ready to play a little bit. We're going to see. I do not believe they have announced who will be stepping in. I can't really find that. If you can, let me know. But don't believe, as of 41 minutes ago, they have not announced who will be coaching the defense this week. USC's slate does not get any easier. We'll just say that as they get to play Oregon on the road, in Autzen. So, I think we're going to see a defense that might be playing a little bit better. I don't know if it's going to be enough, especially going against Oregon. But, with that being said, we're going to go up into the latest story. You have a little bit more of the information on this one, so I will let you go in and talk about this. But we have some new news on Michigan.
It actually just happened right as we were recording this. We weren't kind of going to talk about this, but I did see something. It was Pete Thamel right as we were recording this today. We're recording this Monday evening. And this just broke from Pete Thamel. But more news on Michigan is that they are – I'm trying to see where. I don't know if it was Thamel. It might have been somebody else. But there is news currently breaking that Michigan is expected here within the – it was supposedly supposed to be today due to insiders of college football. But they were supposed to be hearing of potential action by the Big Ten today regarding the future of suspensions or – certain situations when it came to the head coach Jim Harbaugh. That has been pushed back. Obviously, that was announced this morning that has been pushed back to where we are going to hear at least 2 days. But it has just been announced that Michigan has received notice from the Big Ten that potential action will be acted on Wednesday. This is really the grace period that the Big Ten is giving Michigan right now to let them know and kind of a warning that, hey, we're about to issue something out. Obviously, this has been a very big ongoing scandal that's been going on in college football. Usually when you see scandals like this, they don't happen during the season. This is really the first one that I can remember that's been going on during the season while football is being played and has really a major impact toward the team that is playing, and that's Michigan. Obviously, some people want the head chopped off. They want Harbaugh fired. They want Michigan to be, postseason ineligible. Others start to see it as, the Big Ten's not going to mess with the money. The money's where Michigan is. You don't want to downplay their games against Penn State this weekend. And then obviously the game on November 25th against Ohio State. It's a very interesting situation, but it sounds like we're going to hear maybe a suspension against Jim Harbaugh, maybe some action somewhere else. They did fire Connor Stalions. I believe that was Friday. It was announced that he was fired officially from the University of Michigan football team. But very interesting news. Obviously, it kind of sounds like this is going to be a suspension, and it's probably going to come down against Jim Harbaugh. But Michigan has said, with the president and the athletic director, they are going to take legal action against the Big Ten if there is going to be a suspension against Jim Harbaugh. But it seems like that sportsmanship clause the word that's been tossed around a lot. That seems to be what the Big Ten is going to act upon here. Because obviously there was the coaches meeting, there was the athletic directors meeting, and we're starting to now hear some, powerful people voice some opinions about Michigan where, if everybody's doing it, why would they be saying it if they're guilty of it? So it's a very interesting situation for Michigan. We're going to have to definitely dive into that for the next episode. Might be number 1 on our list for the next episode, but yeah, a big game for them this weekend, but very interesting news that's coming out that we might be seeing a suspension from Jim Harbaugh on Wednesday with whatever this potential action is going to be from the Big Ten that's supposed to happen come sometime Wednesday.
Yeah, that's pretty big news. For me, I'm kind of, Tony Petitti coming from CBS. I think he would value the viewership that Michigan would find, especially through this year. But it may be in his hands, but it also may be out of his hands because it sounds like you said, there's a lot of powerful individuals in this conversation. So, with that being said, we're gonna go ahead and drop into our top 25. Mine, I'm gonna go ahead and start out from 25 to 21. SMU comes back into the poll. They've been playing really good football lately. They just beat a pretty good Rice team this weekend. So, 24, I have West Virginia also breaking back in. They You said earlier they pretty much they handled business against BYU. Notre Dame falling all the way to 23. North Carolina staying put at 22, and USC is going to drop a spot to 21.
Yeah, for mine this week, who will be dropping out for me? Number 23, Texas A&M drops out of my top 25 with the loss against Ole Miss, and Miami with that loss to NC State drops out. But at 25, I'm going West Virginia. 24, Louisville. 23, Oklahoma State, 22, Kansas, and 21, North Carolina.
For me, 20, I have Louisville. Kansas State falls 2 spots for me to 19. Oklahoma State rises to 18. Arizona at 17. And Utah going to fall to 16.
At 20, I have Notre Dame. 19, UCLA stays in my top 25. 18, Kansas State. 17, Oklahoma dropping down a good bit. And 16, Utah.
For me, I have Oklahoma falling all the way to 15, Oregon State to 14, Penn State at 13, Tennessee at 12, and Ole Miss going to rise all the way up to 11.
So for 15 for me, I've got Oregon State. 14, I've got Arizona. 13, LSU. 12, Missouri. And 11 rising pretty big this week. Tennessee at 11.
I have another SEC team at 10. I'm going to rise Missouri. Thought they played a really good game. LSU stays put at 9. Washington falls down to 8. Florida State rises 1 spot to 7. And Texas goes to 6.
At 10, I have Ole Miss this week. 9 dropping down, I have Florida State. 8, I have Penn State. 7, I have Washington. And 6, I have Alabama.
5, I have the Ohio State Buckeyes. 4, I have Alabama rising from 6. 3 is the Ducks of Oregon. 2, the Georgia Bulldogs. And 1, the Michigan Wolverines.
Yeah, my top 5 is a little bit interesting, not too much of a change, but Alabama's at 5 for me. At 4, I've got Oregon. 3, I've got Georgia. 2, Ohio State. And 1 remains Michigan for me.
All right, we both have the Wolverines of Michigan at 1. We're going to have to see what happens to them coming up later in the week, but that is going to be it for our show. That was a good breakdown for Week 10 of the college football season. Going to be looking forward to the Week 11 slate, which is pretty loaded, and thankfully, Kate and I are actually going to be able to be together this weekend to watch some football, so we should have a pretty good breakdown show for you either next Monday or Tuesday. Make sure to look out for our preview show for Week 11. Should be coming out either Thursday or Friday, but for that is going to be our show. My name is Tyler Stevens, joined by my co-host, Cade Williamson. Thank you for listening to the Orbit Football Podcast.